Do you think you're sharp enough to recognize toxic people? Do you believe that if someone tried to manipulate you, you'd see it? That if a relationship was unhealthy, you'd know? But what about the ones who make you feel guilty just for being yourself? Who drains you simply because you can't bring yourself to walk away? Who, when you say, "I'm not okay," somehow makes you feel selfish for speaking up? Jung didn't warn you about bad people. He warned you about those who are unaware of the darkness within themselves, because they truly don't know what they're doing, and yet they will still make you carry their emotions, stretch yourself to hold them together, shrink so they don't break. And you think that's love, or kindness, or duty. It's not. That's you living inside a psychological map. That isn't yours. You've become a container, a mirror, a place to unload. You're being assimilated, quietly but completely. They're not evil, but they are dangerous. And their danger doesn't come from what they do, but from the fact that they have no idea what they're doing to you. In this video, you won't just learn to recognize the 6 most dangerous types of people according to Carl Jung. You'll see yourself on both sides. You'll finally understand why some relationships feel so exhausting, even when you can't explain why. And if you're brave enough to stay until the end, you'll learn how to protect your soul without hurting anyone. Are you ready? You think you're helping. You think you're being compassionate. You think you're mature enough to carry one more person on your shoulders. But you don't realize you've stepped into a psychological field that isn't yours, a place where every emotion, every wound, every guilt doesn't come from you, yet seeks you out as if you're the only space quiet enough to hold it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained? Not because there was conflict, but because you were carrying something that didn't belong to you? Have you ever been blamed for something you never did, yet still found yourself feeling guilty? Have you ever been made into the savior of a tragedy that had nothing to do with you? Carl Jung called this projection the unconscious act of displacement. When someone can't face the darkness inside them, they cast it onto you. They turn you into the betrayer, the healer, the cause of their sorrow, their rage, their shame. You're no longer a person. You become a symbol, a mirror, a role. But you don't realize it, because it all arrives so gently. No one screams in your face. No one points the finger directly. Just a few vague remarks. A quiet glance when you say no. A sigh when you don't stay. A subtle disappointment you feel, without even knowing why. You start to doubt yourself. Am I being insensitive? Am I too cold? Am I the one causing pain? At some point, you begin to live carefully. You shrink yourself so they don't get hurt. You stay silent when you're tired, afraid your honesty might make them sad. You carry their emotions as if they were your responsibility, and while they've never faced their wounds, you're already buried in them. Like a gatekeeper guarding pain that was never yours. They're not evil, but they're being run by their unconscious. And you're the one paying the price. You're not hurt because of them. You're hurt because you stop being yourself when you're near them. Carl Jung didn't write for the heartless. He wrote for those who feel deeply, but forgot where their boundaries are. For those who love too much, understand too deeply, forgive too quickly, and in the end, dissolve into someone else's unconscious without ever realizing it. You think helping others is a good thing, but if you're helping them run from their darkness, you're betraying yourself first. Because what the unconscious truly needs isn't someone to heal it, but someone who can endure it without being pulled in. Jung once said, "The shadow you refuse to see will run your life, and you'll call it fate." The truth is, it's not just you who carries a shadow. Everyone does. And when they don't face it, they send it to you. They borrow your face to speak to their past. They use you as a mirror to wrestle with the parts of themselves they never dared to confront. The most dangerous people aren't the cruel ones, but the ones disconnected from themselves. They live behind masks. They love through their complexes. They manipulate without realizing they're doing it. They don't mean to hurt you. They're just trying to survive. But in the process, they use you as a life raft. And if you're not awake, you'll drown. Jung never said you had to push everyone away. He only said, stay awake, because no one can wound you deeply unless you allow them into an unguarded part of your unconscious. You cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And you cannot live your life if you keep carrying someone else's soul on your back. Awakening doesn't mean cutting people off. Awakening means standing still without being pulled into their invisible game. It's when you say, I see your pain, but I am not that pain. No one walks into your life with a label that says, dangerous. They arrive with attentive eyes, a gentle smile, a kind of woundedness you feel responsible for healing. You don't guard yourself because it feels like trust. You stay because you think you can fix them, but slowly you begin to realize you're no longer yourself. You apologize for things you never did. You carry emotions that aren't yours. You start to wonder, am I hurting someone just by being honest? Carl Jung warned us, danger doesn't always come from bad people. It comes from people who don't know what they're doing to you. And it's this unconsciousness that seeps in, spreads quietly, and unravels you from the inside out. There are 6 kinds of people like this, not because they're evil, but because they've never faced their own shadow. And while they look away, they use you as the mirror. Number 1, the unconscious manipulator, projection. They don't blame you, not directly. They simply tell a story, and in it, you're always the reason for how they feel. You're not there. They're sad. You're being honest. They're hurt. You don't meet their vague expectations. They're disappointed, but they won't say it. They'll just look at you like you've betrayed them. Jung said, projection blinds us psychologically because instead of seeing ourselves, we see me in others. And in their story, you're no longer you. You're a wall they throw unprocessed emotions at, a background character in a drama with no script. Number 2, the mask wearer, persona. They're kind, always composed, always fine, so much so that you start to feel like you're the unstable one for not keeping it together like they do. But what suffocates you isn't their goodness. It's their denial of anything dark within them, just to maintain a lovable image. Jung called it the persona, the social mask we wear to be accepted. You never really know what they feel, what they need, or who they are underneath. Eventually you realize you're reacting to a statue that can smile, but doesn't know how to love. Number 3, the shadow repressor. They're overly nice, quietly self-sacrificing, endlessly accommodating. Until one day, you say the wrong word, and a volcano that's been dormant for years erupts. You're stunned. But Jung wouldn't be. He wrote, the shadow doesn't disappear, it waits. Instead of facing their anger, jealousy, or selfishness, they lock it down and unleash it on the safest person in the room, you. No one else believes they could lose it like that, but you know, you've been the target of that storm, and no one could even name what it was. Number 4, the moral controller. They don't use mind games to manipulate you. They're just trying to help you become better. They wear morality like a robe, but underneath it is an unacknowledged hunger for control. You're not allowed to disappoint them. You're not allowed to be insensitive. And if you dare to be real, you're irresponsible with other people's feelings. Jung said, when someone can't face the lower parts of themselves, they become judges of everyone who can. You're not living with a partner. You're living next to an invisible courtroom, always in session. Number 5, the complex. Driven. They love you, then punish you. They need you, then push you away. It's not that you did anything wrong, but everything you do triggers a past wound they never resolved. You're not just in a relationship with them. You're coexisting with layers of unprocessed memories you never caused, but you're being pulled into as if you were the repeat offender. Jung called complexes fragmented personalities, autonomous forces in the psyche. When they take over, awareness disappears, and you become the perfect canvas for their eruption. Number 6, the emotional vampire, psychic vampire. They don't attack, they're just there, constantly, and they quietly drain the life out of you through their endless need to be emotionally held. Every instability, you must be present. Every fear, you must listen. Every emptiness, they expect you to fill. At first, it feels like a connection. Then, dependency. Then, captivity. Soon, you no longer know which feelings are yours. You become emotionally entangled, exhausted by things you never lived through. Jung called them undifferentiated souls. People who don't know how to exist as individuals, so they survive by dissolving into you. None of these people is your enemy, but if you're not awake, you'll become the victim in your own life. Imagine this. You walk into a room. There's no one inside, just an old wooden table, and on that table, 6 masks. No names, no instructions. But something about them keeps your eyes locked. One radiates a fragile softness, as if you don't touch it, it might still break. The second is so perfect it feels cold, every detail polished, as if emotion itself were a flaw. The third is silent, but beneath the cracked paint, you sense a fury that was never allowed to speak. The fourth smells of morality, not human kindness, but control disguised as reason. The fifth changes shape every time you look again. Sometimes it's gentle eyes. Sometimes it's a storm of feelings crashing straight into your chest. And the last looks ordinary, but the longer you stare, the more exhausted you feel. As if it's draining your energy. Just by being there, you sit. There are no mirrors in the room, but in your mind, a reflection appears. You glance at the masks again, and suddenly, memories surface. Faces you've known. The one who always made you feel guilty. The one you had to keep it together around. The one so kind it felt unreal. The one who made you feel wrong just for being real. The one who shattered, but shattered into you. And the one who couldn't live without you, but never really saw you. You once loved them. You once tried to save them. You once believed that if you were just good enough, it would all be okay. But in this room, no one else is here but you. And for the first time you realize, each of these masks has once lived on your face. You've once been manipulated through pain you never named. Once wore a mask just to be loved. Once bottled up, let it explode on someone who didn't deserve it. Once clung to being right, so you didn't have to face the quiet wrong within. Once held on, because you were too afraid to stand alone. Once used love as a shield for your emptiness. You're not bad, and neither were they. But now you understand, and that's why you can't keep pretending you don't see it anymore. Because from this moment, once you've seen, you can't go back to being unconscious. You rise. The masks are still on the table, But this time, you don't choose to wear one. You choose to walk out with your real face, even if it's not perfect yet. You weren't hurt because they were too toxic. You were hurt because you believed that carrying their emotions was proof of love. You thought you were being compassionate. But compassion isn't letting someone deposit their darkness into your heart and calling it connection. You thought you were being mature, but maturity doesn't mean always being the understanding one. While no one ever truly understands you, you spent so much time trying to be the good person in someone else's story, but you forgot that story was never yours. You are not their healer, not their savior, not the reason they'll change. And if they won't choose to look within, everything you do is just painting over the walls they built to avoid the truth. Jung once said, "Anyone who does not face their darkness will see it in others and call it an enemy. And that enemy might be you. Not because you're bad, but because you reflect the part of them they're too afraid to face." You were not hurt because you were weak. You were hurt because you became the mirror they used to fight themselves. And the problem with being the mirror is that it's not allowed to crack. It must stay silent, stay clear, reflect loyally. But when you start to tremble, they turn away. No one apologizes to the mirror that held too many shattered stares. You don't need to become tougher. You don't need to learn how to be numb. You only need one thing: to stop believing that your melting is proof of love. Love doesn't make you disappear. Love doesn't ask you to hold your breath. Love doesn't punish you for your real emotions. Kindness is not cleaning up someone else's mind, then claiming their wounds as your own. Maturity isn't about how much you can endure. It's about knowing what no longer deserves your endurance. There is a quiet way to break free from manipulation. Not by cutting people off, not by exploding in anger or disappearing, but by simply choosing to stop playing the role someone else has written for you. Because that's where the real damage begins. Not when someone does something to you, but when they stop seeing you as you. They start seeing their parents in you. An old betrayer, a savior, a culprit. And piece by piece, you get pulled into invisible roles, weighted by a lifetime of wounds they've never resolved. Carl Jung warned, "Unconscious people don't mean to hurt you, but they will use you as a substitute map for the inner world they refuse to face. And the more empathetic you are, the easier it is to become their stage." So, what do? Don't react. Just recognize. If you're soothing a storm you didn't start. If you're apologizing for a choice you never made. If you feel yourself stretching thin just to keep someone else stable, pause. Don't leave the conversation. Just leave the role they've assigned to you. You're not a cup to be filled with what others can't digest. You have the right to reclaim your emotional boundaries, the right to protect your inner architecture, the right to step away from the role of the one who makes everything okay. Say, "I'm not sure that belongs to me." Hold your silence, not as submission, but as a shield from being pulled into someone else's chaos. Then ask yourself, is this feeling truly mine? Or am I reflecting a part of someone else they haven't faced yet? No need for declarations, no need for drama, just don't enter their world anymore. When you do that, you'll notice the pull fades. You stop reacting. You no longer have anything to prove. You begin to touch the threshold of your emotional truth. And that is when you start living with the voice inside you that no one else ever stayed long enough to hear. Maybe you no longer know which feelings are truly yours. Maybe you've spent so long playing the role of the understanding one that even you forgot. When was the last time someone asked you, "Are you okay?" without needing you to smile first? Maybe you're not exhausted because life is too harsh, but because you've been living inside a script you didn't write. Jung never asked you to revolt. He only asked this: if others cannot face their own shadow, They will hand it to you, again and again. And if you are a cup, how many times have others poured into you their anger, their sadness, their unprocessed fears, and you drank it all without ever asking, "Is this mine?" The question is, does that cup still belong to you, or have you just been holding what was never yours to carry? You don't have to answer yet. Just sit for a moment. If, in that quiet, you hear a familiar sigh, maybe it's time. You are not weak for having been manipulated. You are simply too sensitive, not in flaw, but in depth. Sensitive enough to see that the other person was in pain, and you believed you could carry it for them. But there is one thing Jung would want you to know, even if he never said it in soft words. Sensitivity was never meant to be a shelter for other people's shadows. It was meant for you to see yourself more clearly, more truthfully, more wholly. You've lived like a mirror, held up for others to see themselves. A mirror that wasn't allowed to crack, wasn't allowed to react, wasn't allowed to say, "I'm tired." And in that silence, you began to lose the reflection of your truth, piece by piece. Jung called it unconscious devouring, when you no longer know where your emotions end, and the weight others pour into you begins. And that devouring doesn't arrive with violence. It comes through expectant eyes, through silences that make you feel guilty, through unspoken demands you never agreed to but still tried to fulfill. You don't need to become stronger. You don't need to learn how to not take things personally. You don't need to put on another layer of armor. You only need one thing: honesty with yourself. Honest when something feels wrong, even if no one says it out loud. Honest when you feel drained in a conversation where the other person is only speaking to themselves through you. Honest when you know if you stay, you'll start to disappear. Truth doesn't need to be shouted. It only needs to be lived. Every time you hold your boundary, even in quiet, you are choosing not to abandon yourself again. No one taught you how to return to being human. Not even Jung. He only pointed toward it and quietly stepped back. The rest is yours to choose. Maybe you're sitting in the dark, where no one knows what you've silently endured just to keep others whole. Maybe you've just realized what's exhausting you isn't weakness, but the fact that you've lived too long inside other people's emotions without ever naming your own. And maybe, for the first time, you feel the need to stand up, not to resist, but to stop dissolving into stories that were never yours. Carl Jung didn't leave you a map. He simply said, "The darkness only disappears when you dare to look at it long enough." This journey doesn't ask you to become someone new, only to stop pretending you're someone else. And if you're still here, it means some part of you is already ready. The next video won't speak louder, only deeper. It will place a hand on a part of you you thought was sealed shut, gently, not to reopen it, but to remind you, you never really left it behind. If you'd like, leave a sign below, just one word. And if not, that's okay too. I'll still be here until we meet again, somewhere deeper and a little more light from within.